We take for granted that time flows forward. Every morning you wake slightly older than when you fell asleep. Your coffee cools. Your memories accumulate. The clock on the wall ticks in one direction, and we accept this as we accept gravity, as simply the way things are. But here is the strange thing. The laws of physics don't care. The fundamental equations, the mathematics that describes how particles move, how forces act, how the universe operates at its deepest level, work equally well backward as forward. Drop a ball, and physics describes its fall, but run the equations in reverse, and they describe the ball leaping back into your hand. Nothing in the fundamental laws forbids this. So why don't we see cups unshatter? Why can't we remember tomorrow? In 2009, a physicist threw a party for time travelers. The champagne was chilled. The canapes were arranged. A banner welcomed guests from the future. And the invitations were sent out only after the party ended, published in newspapers worldwide with precise coordinates. Nobody came. The champagne went flat. The chairs stayed empty. This was not a social failure. It was an experiment. And its result points towards something remarkable. The universe appears to have built a security system into its deepest laws, a chronology protection agency, making the world safe for historians. Why does it exist? What is the universe hiding? As we shall see, the answer will transform how you understand time itself. We find ourselves in a bewildering world. Every morning we wake slightly older than when we fell asleep. Our coffee cools. Our memories accumulate. The clock on the wall moves inexorably forward. And we accept this as we accept gravity, as simply the way things are. But here is the question that should keep you awake at night. Why? Why does time insist on flowing in one direction? Why can you remember yesterday's breakfast, but not tomorrow's? You can walk backward across a room. You can reverse a video. You can unsay nothing. Time is different. On June 28, 2009, a most peculiar party took place at the University of Cambridge. The champagne was chilled. The canapes were arranged with care. A banner hung on the wall reading, "Welcome Time Travellers." The coordinates were precise, 52 de 1221 N 0°747E. The time was noon exactly, and yet, for hours, the host sat entirely alone. Not a single guest arrived. This was not a social failure. It was an experiment, perhaps the most elegant experiment ever designed to test whether the past can be visited. Here is the crucial detail. The invitations to this party were sent out only after it had already ended. They were published the following day in newspapers and scientific journals, with the precise location and time clearly stated. The logic was airtight. If backward time travel ever becomes possible, at any point in the future of human civilization, then surely someone would attend a party specifically designed to welcome them. Think about it. Not just humans alive today, but everyone who will ever live. Every physicist of the future with access to a time machine. Every curious traveller. Every prankster who couldn't resist the joke. The invitation would reach them all, eventually, through the historical record. The champagne went flat. The canapes dried out. Nobody came. What does this tell us? The obvious answer is that time travel is simply impossible. A fantasy relegated to science fiction alongside faster-than-light starships and teleportation. Case closed. Move on. But as we shall see, the reality is far stranger. The laws of physics, specifically Einstein's general relativity, our best theory of space, time, and gravity, appear to permit time travel. The equations work. The mathematics is sound. Physicists have found solutions to Einstein's field equations that describe paths looping from future to past. These are not errors or oversights. They are consequences of the theory. And yet something seems to intervene. Something prevents the paradoxes. Something guards the past from meddling visitors. I call it the Chronology Protection Agency. The empty party was not merely a whimsical demonstration, it was data. In science, what doesn't happen can be as informative as what does. The absence of guests suggests one of two possibilities. Either backward time travel is fundamentally impossible, or something specifically prevents the kind of visits that would be detectable, the kind that would create paradox. The distinction matters enormously. The first possibility closes a door. The second opens a window onto something far more profound about the structure of reality itself. Consider for a moment what you assume about time. You assume it flows. You assume the past is fixed and the future is open. You assume that causes precede effects, that yesterday is gone and tomorrow hasn't happened yet. These assumptions feel so natural, so obvious, that questioning them seems almost absurd. But common sense is merely the collection of prejudices we acquire before age 18. Common sense once insisted the Earth was flat, that the sun orbited us, that heavier objects fall faster. Common sense is not physics. Over the next hour, we shall embark on an investigation into why the universe appears to conspire against time travelers. We will bend space-time into pretzels. We will fall through wormholes. We will murder our own grandfathers, theoretically. And we will discover why the cosmos may have built a security system into its deepest laws. By the end, your understanding of time itself will have collapsed and rebuilt into something far more wondrous. The champagne went flat. Nobody came. Let us find out why. Here is the disturbing truth at the heart of physics. The fundamental equations do not care which way time flows. Drop a ball, watch it fall, accelerate, hit the ground. Newton's laws describe this perfectly. The force of gravity, the acceleration, the trajectory. Now imagine filming that fall and playing the video backward. The ball leaps from the ground into your hand, decelerating as it rises. Here is the question. Does this reversed video violate the laws of physics? The mathematics says no. Newton's equations work equally well in both directions. Run them forward, and they describe a falling ball. Run them backward, and they describe a rising one. The equations themselves contain no arrow, no preference, no indication that one direction is correct and the other forbidden. This should alarm you. It gets worse. The same is true for electromagnetism, for the strong and weak nuclear forces, even for quantum mechanics at the particle level. The fundamental laws of physics exhibit what physicists call time reversal symmetry. They work just as well backward as forward. Consider what this means. Play a video of your morning routine in reverse. Toothpaste flows back into the tube. Coffee leaps from the floor into the cup. Eggs unscramble themselves into neat shells. Every single one of these reversed events is permitted by the microscopic laws of physics. Every molecular collision, every electromagnetic interaction, every quantum transition, all are perfectly reversible. Yet we never see eggs unscramble. Why? This gap between what the equations permit and what we observe is where the mystery lives. The arrow of time, the direction we experience so vividly, is not written into the fundamental laws. It emerges from something else. Before we investigate that something else, let us acknowledge an extraordinary fact. We have already achieved time travel. To the future. This is not speculation. It is engineering. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station, traveling at approximately 17,500 miles per hour, age slightly slower than people on Earth's surface. After a year in orbit, they are roughly 0.01 seconds younger than they would have been had they stayed home. The effect is tiny, but it is real and measured. GPS satellites must constantly account for this. They orbit at speeds and altitudes where time passes differently than on the ground. If the system ignored relativistic effects, your navigation would drift by kilometers per day. Every time you use satellite navigation, you are benefiting from Einstein's theory of relativity. Time bends. This is not philosophy. This is how your phone knows where you are. The effect becomes more dramatic as speeds increase. A particle accelerated to 99.9%. The speed of light experiences time so slowly that a single second of particle time corresponds to roughly 22 seconds in the laboratory. Particles created in cosmic ray collisions in the upper atmosphere, particles that should decay long before reaching the ground, survive the journey because, from their perspective, almost no time has passed. Time dilation is not a theory awaiting confirmation. It is a confirmed phenomenon, tested to extraordinary precision, relied upon by technologies we use daily. So we can travel to the future. We do it constantly, if only by tiny amounts. The question becomes, can we travel backward? In 1949, the mathematician Kurt Gödel discovered something remarkable. He found a solution to Einstein's field equations, a mathematically valid description of a possible universe in which the entire cosmos rotates. In Gödel's universe, paths exist that loop back on themselves. Travel far enough in the right direction, and you return to your own past. These are called closed timelike curves. They are not errors. They are not violations of general relativity. They are permitted solutions. Gödel presented his discovery to Einstein as a birthday gift. The implications troubled Einstein for the rest of his life. In the 1980s, physicist Kip Thorne explored another possibility: wormholes. A wormhole is a tunnel through space-time, a shortcut connecting two distant points. Thorne realized that if you took one mouth of a wormhole and accelerated it to near light speed, then brought it back, time dilation would mean that mouth had experienced less time than the stationary one. The result would be a time machine. Enter one mouth in 2025, exit the other in 2020. General relativity permits this, and yet nobody came to the party. The equations permit backward time travel. The universe prevents it. Something is happening that the fundamental laws do not obviously require. Let me be clear about what we have established. Time's arrow, the direction we experience so vividly, is not carved into the basic laws of physics. It emerges from thermodynamics, from the statistical tendency of systems to evolve toward greater disorder. It emerges from the fact that the universe began in an extraordinarily low entropy state at the Big Bang and has been tumbling toward higher entropy ever since. But this raises as many questions as it answers. Why did the universe begin in such a special state? Why does entropy always increase? And if the fundamental laws permit backward time travel, what specifically prevents it? Every time you remember yesterday, but cannot remember tomorrow, you are experiencing something profound. Not a fundamental law, but a consequence of your position in a cosmos that began in an improbable condition and has been evolving toward probability ever since. The arrow of time is not a prison wall built into reality. It is an emergent pattern. And emergent patterns can, in principle, have exceptions. The equations that govern the universe do not care which way time flows. We do. The question is, why? To understand why nobody came to the party, to understand what specifically prevents backward time travel, we must go deeper. We must understand how space and time weaved together into something that can curve, warp, and perhaps loop back upon itself. We must understand the fabric that bends. Before Einstein, we lived in a universe of absolutes. Space was space, an infinite, unchanging stage on which events occurred. Time was time, a universal clock ticking, identically for everyone, everywhere, forever. Then came 1905, and the stage began to warp. Einstein's special relativity revealed that space and time are not separate things. They are woven together into a single fabric, space-time. Your motion through space affects your motion through time. Move faster through space, and you move slower through time. This is not a metaphor or a mathematical trick. It is the way the universe works. But special relativity was only the beginning. In 1915, Einstein completed his general theory of relativity, and space-time went from static fabric to something far stranger, a fabric that bends. Imagine a rubber sheet stretched flat, held taut at the edges. This is empty space-time, flat, featureless, uniform. Now place a bowling ball on the sheet. The sheet curves, creating a depression around the ball. Roll a marble nearby, and it spirals toward the bowling ball, not because some invisible force pulls it, but because it follows the straightest path available on a curved surface. This is gravity. The Earth doesn't reach out and pull you down. The massive Earth curves space-time around itself, and you follow the curve downward. What you experience as the force of gravity is actually the geometry of space-time. You are not being pulled. You are following the straightest possible path through curved space and time. This insight, that gravity is geometry, ranks among the greatest intellectual achievements in human history. And it has consequences that Einstein himself found disturbing. If space-time curves, it can curve a lot. Near the Sun, the curvature bends starlight, shifting apparent positions, an effect measured during a 1919 eclipse that made Einstein famous overnight. Near a neutron star, the curvature is so severe that light itself struggles to escape. Near a black hole, the curvature becomes so extreme that space-time folds around the singularity, creating a region from which nothing, not light, not matter, not information, can ever return. Time, too, warps. A clock near a massive object ticks slower than a clock far away. This is not a malfunction. It is the nature of time in curved space-time. On the surface of the Earth, time passes slightly slower than on a mountaintop. At the event horizon of a black hole, as seen from outside, time appears to stop entirely. GPS satellites experience both effects. They move fast, special relativistic time dilation, time slows, and they are farther from Earth's mass, general relativistic time dilation, time speeds up. The net effect is that satellite clocks tick slightly faster than clocks on the ground. Without corrections, GPS would be useless within hours. The system works because we understand curved spacetime. This is not theory awaiting proof. This is engineering. Now here is where it becomes extraordinary. If spacetime can curve, it can theoretically curve back on itself. In 1935, Einstein and his colleague Nathan Rosen discovered that the equations of general relativity permit structures now called Einstein-Rosen bridges, tunnels connecting two distant points in spacetime. We know them by another name, wormholes. A wormhole is a shortcut. Imagine a piece of paper with two dots on it, far apart. The ordinary distance between them follows the surface of the paper, a long journey. But fold the paper so the dots touch, punch a hole through, and suddenly the distance is zero. A wormhole does this to spacetime. It connects two regions that, via the normal route might be light years apart. Here is the crucial insight. Wormholes don't just connect distant places. They can connect distant times. Kip Thorne worked through the physics in the 1980s. Take a wormhole with two mouths. Leave one mouth stationary on Earth. Put the other on a spaceship. Accelerate the spaceship to near the speed of light. Then bring it back. Due to time dilation, the travelling mouth has experienced less time than the stationary one. Say 10 years pass on Earth, while only 1 year passes for the spaceship. Now the two mouths are connected, but they exist at different times. Enter the Earth mouth in 2035, travel through the wormhole, exit the spaceship mouth, and find yourself in 2026. You have travelled 9 years into the past. General relativity permits this. The equations allow it. The mathematics is clean. And yet, nobody came to the party. We must be careful here. General relativity permits time machines. It does not require them. The equations allow certain solutions, mathematical descriptions of possible spacetimes that include closed loops where the future connects to the past. Whether such structures can actually form, whether they can remain stable, whether anything can traverse them, these are separate questions. The universe permits many things mathematically that are prevented physically. A unicorn violates no law of physics, yet we observe none. The question is not whether the equations of general relativity allow time travel. They do. The question is whether something else, something not yet discussed, forbids it. What we have built so far is the architecture of space-time. We understand that space and time are unified. We understand that mass curves this unified fabric. We understand that time dilation is real, measured and relied upon. And we understand that the mathematics permits paths from future to past. The framework that makes time travel conceivable also makes something else conceivable. Paradox. If you can travel to the past, you can meet people who lived before you were born. You can give them information they shouldn't have. You can change events that have already happened. You can, in principle, meet your own grandfather as a young man before your parent was conceived. And that raises a question so troubling that it threatens the logical structure of reality itself. What would happen if you killed him? Suppose you build a time machine. The technology doesn't matter. A wormhole, a rotating cylinder, some yet to be discovered mechanism. What matters is that it works. You step inside, set the dial for 1920, and emerge in a world a century younger than the one you left. You have a mission. Find your grandfather as a young man, before he has met your grandmother, before your parent was conceived, and kill him. The logic of what follows is inescapable, and it devours itself. If your grandfather dies in 1920, your parent is never born. If your parent is never born, you are never born. If you are never born, you cannot travel back to 1920. But if you don't travel back, your grandfather lives, your parent is born, you are born, you build a time machine, you travel back. The paradox spirals forever, each conclusion contradicting its premise. This is the grandfather paradox, and it appears to be a logical proof that backward time travel is impossible. But look more carefully at what it actually proves. The paradox demonstrates that paradoxical time travel is impossible, time travel that creates logical contradictions. It does not prove that all time travel is impossible. There is a difference, and that difference opens a door. Consider an alternative scenario. You travel to 1920. You find your grandfather. You raise the gun jams. You try again. This time you have second thoughts, a sudden wave of doubt that makes you hesitate until the moment passes. You try a third time. You find your grandfather in a crowded street. You take aim. At that precise instant, a stranger bumps into you. The bullet goes wide. Your grandfather, startled by the commotion, ducks into a doorway and narrowly avoids being struck by a falling sign that would have killed him had he remained on the sidewalk. Every time you try to create a paradox, something intervenes. This is not fate in any mystical sense. It is a constraint imposed by logic itself. If your presence in 1920 is to be consistent, if the universe is to avoid logical contradiction, then you cannot succeed in preventing your own existence. The gun must jam. The doubt must arise. The stranger must bump you. This leads to a profound reframing. Perhaps time travel is possible, but only in ways that maintain logical consistency. Perhaps you can travel to the past, but you cannot change it, because you were always there. The newspaper from 1920 already reports the mysterious stranger who fired a shot in a crowded street. The police records note the incident. Your presence is not a change to history. It is history. This is the principle of consistent histories. If time travel occurs, it was always part of the past. You cannot change what was already true, not because you are forbidden, but because change implies contradiction, and contradiction cannot exist. Think of it this way. Imagine the universe as a film that has already been shot and developed. Every frame is fixed. The narrative is complete. Time travel doesn't give you the power to edit the film. It gives you a role that was always in the script. You think you're improvising, but the final cut already exists. The bootstrap paradox complicates this picture, but does not break it. Imagine your older self visits your younger self and gives you a watch. You keep the watch for decades, grow old, travel back in time, and give it to your younger self. Where did the watch come from? Who made it? The question has no answer in the usual sense. The watch exists in a closed causal loop. Its existence is consistent, but it has no origin outside the loop. This is strange, perhaps disturbing, but it is not logically forbidden. Consistent histories can contain loops. They just can't contain contradictions. Some physicists escape the paradox differently. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that the universe constantly branches into multiple versions, each realizing one of the possible outcomes of every quantum event. In this picture, perhaps killing your grandfather doesn't create a paradox. It creates a new branch. You remain in the branch where you came from, while a new branch exists where your grandfather died and you were never born. This dissolves the paradox by multiplying universes. It's elegant in its way, but it raises its own problems. Where do the new branches come from? What determines which branch you end up in? And perhaps most troublingly, it doesn't explain why. In our experience, the past seems so thoroughly fixed. The many worlds interpretation is a way of avoiding paradox. The consistent history's interpretation is a way of living with it. But neither tells us what physical mechanism enforces consistency. Neither explains why your gun jams. This is the deepest question the grandfather paradox raises. Not whether time travel is possible, but what specific feature of the universe prevents logical contradiction. Philosophy cannot answer this. Logic alone cannot answer it. Only physics can. And as we shall see, when we examine what actually happens at the heart of a time machine, when we apply quantum mechanics to curved spacetime, we discover something extraordinary. The universe appears to have built a defense system against paradox into its deepest laws. Something destroys time machines before they can create contradiction. In the early 1990s, physicists began asking a pointed question. What actually happens at the threshold of a time machine? Not in general terms, not whether time travel is possible in principle, but what the laws of physics specifically predict when you try to create a closed timelike curve. What happens to the quantum fields that pervade all of space? What happens to the vacuum itself? The answer they found was remarkable. To understand it, you need to know that empty space is not truly empty. Even in a perfect vacuum, far from any matter, quantum mechanics requires a constant fizz of activity. Particles and antiparticles flicker into existence and annihilate each other in spans too short to measure directly. These are called virtual particles, and their effects are real and measured. They shift the energy levels of atoms. They create the Casimir effect between metal plates. They contribute to the electron's magnetic moment. The quantum vacuum is not nothing. It is a seething froth of potential, constrained by the laws of physics to average out to the stable emptiness we observe. Now imagine building a wormhole. You stabilize it with exotic matter, negative energy density, which general relativity permits, but which remains challenging to produce. You separate the mouths. You accelerate one to near light speed and bring it back. The time dilation creates a difference. Enter one mouth, exit the other, earlier than you entered. As you adjust the wormhole, bringing the two mouths closer to forming a closed timelike curve, something begins to happen to the quantum vacuum near the throat. The virtual particles that normally flicker in and out start to interact with themselves. Think of it this way. A virtual particle created near the wormhole's mouth travels through the wormhole, exits in the past, and encounters itself before it was created. The quantum field loops back on its own history. This creates a feedback effect. Imagine holding a microphone too close to its speaker. The microphone picks up the sound. The speaker amplifies it. The microphone picks up the amplified sound. The speaker amplifies it further. Within moments, the system screeches into overload, the howl of acoustic feedback. Something similar happens to quantum fields near a closed, timelike curve. The virtual particles pile up. The energy density increases. The feedback amplifies. As the wormhole approaches the critical moment, the first instant when something could travel through and emerge in its own past, the quantum vacuum energy at the throat spikes toward infinity. The wormhole pinches shut or explodes. The time machine destroys itself precisely at the moment it would succeed. This is chronology protection. The calculations are technical, involving the stress-energy tensor of quantum fields in curved spacetime. But the conclusion is clear. Any mechanism that would create a closed, time-like curve generates conditions that destroy it before it can form. The laws of physics do not merely permit this outcome, they appear to require it. The crucial point is that chronology protection is not a new rule added to physics. It emerges as a consequence of combining quantum field theory with general relativity, the two most fundamental and well-tested theories we possess. The universe doesn't need a law against time machines. The laws it already has destroy them. There seems to be a chronology protection agency at work, making the world safe for historians. The humour is appropriate. We are discussing the universe's built-in immune response to logical contradiction. The cosmos, it seems, finds paradoxes intolerable, not as a matter of preference, but as a matter of mathematical necessity. I must be honest about the limits of our knowledge. The chronology protection conjecture remains a conjecture. We lack a complete theory of quantum gravity, a theory that fully unifies quantum mechanics with general relativity. Such a theory might reveal loopholes. There might be ways to create closed time-like curves that evade the quantum instabilities we currently predict. But the evidence points strongly in one direction. Every calculation, every approach, every analysis of quantum fields near would-be time machines reaches the same conclusion. Feedback, instability, destruction. The universe protects its own consistency. Consider what this means. If chronology protection is real, if the laws of physics genuinely prevent logical contradictions, then logic is not merely a way we think about reality. Logic is woven into reality's structure. The laws of physics and the laws of logic are not separate categories. They are aspects of the same deep order. This is a profound claim, and it deserves our wonder. We began with an empty party, champagne going flat, canapes drying, a banner welcoming guests who never arrived. We now understand something of why they couldn't come. Not because time travel is obviously impossible, the equations permit it. Not because the universe arbitrarily forbids it, there is no cosmic prohibition. They couldn't come because their coming would create paradox. And paradox is physically unstable. The mechanisms that would enable their journey would destroy themselves before completing it. The universe is not passively consistent. It actively enforces consistency. The Chronology Protection Agency is not a metaphor. It is quantum mechanics meeting general relativity at the edge of causality and finding that causality wins. But this discovery raises questions far deeper than time travel itself. If physics enforces logic, what does this tell us about the nature of reality? If the universe prevents contradiction, what does this imply about time's arrow, about causation, about our experience of choosing one future over another? The implications extend far beyond empty parties and collapsing wormholes. As we shall see, they touch the deepest questions we can ask about existence itself. We return now to the arrow of time, but with new eyes. At the beginning of our journey, we noted something disturbing. The fundamental equations of physics do not care which way time flows. They work equally well forward and backward. A ball falling and a ball rising, a cup shattering and a cup unshattering. The microscopic physics permits both. Yet we never see cups unshattering. We never remember the future. We never grow younger. Time, for us, flows relentlessly in one direction. We attributed this to thermodynamics, to entropy, the measure of disorder that always increases. The universe began in an extraordinarily ordered state at the Big Bang and has been tumbling toward disorder ever since. The arrow of time, we said, emerges from this statistical tendency. But now we can see something deeper. Consider what it means for the past to be fixed. You woke up this morning. You had breakfast. These events happened. They are part of history. You cannot unhappen them. But why not? The conventional answer is simply because they already occurred. The past is gone. It's over. This feels obvious, but it explains nothing. It's like saying heavy things fall because they're heavy. Chronology protection suggests a different answer. The past is fixed not merely because it has already happened. The past is fixed because it is logically complete. Think about what this means. Every event in the past is consistent with every other event. Your memories of breakfast are consistent with the dishes in the sink, with the food missing from the refrigerator, with the state of your stomach, with light that left your kitchen and is now racing into space, carrying information about what happened. All these records, all these traces, all these physical states, they cohere. They tell the same story. The past is a network of consistency. Now imagine trying to change it. You would have to change not just one event, but everything that event influenced. Every record, every memory, every physical trace. You would have to alter your memories, alter the dishes, alter the light streaming through space, you would have to make inconsistent things consistent. And this is not merely difficult. It is logically impossible. It would require the universe to contain contradictions. The past is fixed because altering it would create paradox. And paradox, as we have seen, is physically impossible. This reframes everything. The arrow of time is not a fundamental feature of the laws of physics. Those laws are indifferent to direction. The arrow of time is the direction in which consistency has been established. The past is past because it is complete, every event woven into a coherent whole. The future is future because it is incomplete. We do not yet know which consistent extension of the present will turn out to be real. Imagine the universe as a completed novel. The first chapter is consistent with the last. Every plot point connects. Every character's action follows from what came before. You, as a reader, experience the story linearly, turning pages, discovering what happens next. But the book already exists, complete, on the shelf. The future chapters are not unwritten. You simply haven't read them yet. The arrow of time is like your experience of reading. It arises not because the ink is still wet on future pages, but because you move through a structure that is already whole. This explains something that has puzzled physicists for generations. Why the three arrows of time align. The thermodynamic arrow points from low entropy to high, from order to disorder. The psychological arrow points from remembered to anticipated. We recall the past, not the future. The cosmological arrow points from the Big Bang to the expanding universe, from smaller to larger. Why do these arrows all point the same direction? Why don't we remember the future while entropy decreases? The answer lies in consistency. We remember the past because thermodynamic processes create records. When you form a memory, your brain changes state in a way that correlates with what happened. This requires energy expenditure, which increases entropy. Memory points backward because entropy increases. The two arrows are not independent. They are aspects of the same phenomenon. And chronology protection ensures this alignment is permanent. If you could travel to the past and change it, records and memories would no longer agree. The arrows would decouple. Consistency would unravel. The universe prevents this by preventing paradox. The implications reshape how we understand our experience. Every time you remember an event, you are experiencing the thermodynamic arrow. Your brain states now are correlated with the past through physical traces. Every time you anticipate the future, you are predicting which consistent continuation of the present you might inhabit. Memory feels solid because the past is complete. Anticipation feels uncertain because the future is not yet determined, or rather, because we do not yet know which consistent history we are part of. This is not fatalism. The future being complete does not mean your choices don't matter. Your choices are part of what makes the history consistent. But they cannot create contradiction. They cannot make the past become something other than what it was. The past is not gone. It is beneath you, supporting you, constituting you. The arrow of time points not away from the past, but toward consistency, toward the completion of a coherent story that includes everything that has ever happened. We do not flow through time. We are embedded in it. And if the arrow of time is about consistency, what then of causation? We think causes precede effects, but the fundamental laws make no such distinction. What is causation really? As we shall see, the answer transforms our understanding of freedom itself. We experience ourselves as free. Right now, As you watch this, you might choose to continue or to stop. You might choose to make a cup of tea or to check your phone. These feel like genuine choices, open possibilities that you, through some act of will, collapse into a single reality. Yet physics seems to have a different story. The laws governing atoms and particles are deterministic, or at most random, at the quantum level. Your brain is a physical system, neurons firing according to physical laws, chemicals diffusing along concentration gradients, electrical signals propagating through tissue. If the brain is just physics, and physics is just mathematics, then where is there room for choice? This is the ancient puzzle of free will, and chronology protection offers a surprising resolution. Consider first what we mean by cause. We say that dropping a glass causes it to shatter. We say that striking a match causes it to ignite. Causes precede effects. This seems as obvious as anything can be. But the fundamental equations of physics make no distinction between past and future. They are time-symmetric. If you showed a physicist the mathematical description of a match igniting, they could equally well describe it as a match unigniting, flame retreating into wood, heat flowing inward instead of outward. So what makes the first description causing and the second absurd? The answer lies in records. We say that A causes B when records of A exist at the time B occurs, but not vice versa. The match strike leaves traces before the flame appears, the movement of the hand, the friction, the chemical changes in the match head. These records are what we call the cause. Causation, in this view, is the direction in which records accumulate. It is not a fundamental feature of physics. It is a consequence of thermodynamics, of the way physical systems create traces as entropy increases. Now consider choice. When you face a decision, you experience options as open. You could turn left or right, speak or remain silent, act or refrain. The moment before deciding feels different from the moment after. Before, possibility. After, fact. But here is the deep question. If the future is already determined, if, as we suggested, the universe is like a completed novel, doesn't that mean your choice is illusory? Aren't you just discovering what you were always going to do? The resolution lies in understanding what determined means. Determined by what? Determined, in part, by your choice. Your choice is not something that happens outside physics. It is part of the physics. Your neurons, your deliberation, your sense of weighing options, these are physical processes. And they are among the processes that determine which consistent history exists. Think of it this way. A river is free to flow downhill. It carves canyons, branches into tributaries, winds around obstacles, finds its path to the sea. No one would say the river is imprisoned by gravity. Yet the river cannot flow uphill, not because of a rule against uphill rivers, but because flowing uphill would require energy that simply isn't there. Similarly, you are free to make any choice that maintains consistency. You cannot make choices that create paradoxes, but this is not really a constraint, because paradoxes cannot exist. You cannot choose to create a logical contradiction any more than you can choose to draw a square circle. It is not a limitation on freedom. It is a clarification of what freedom means. Free will is compatibility with consistency. This dissolves the apparent conflict between determinism and choice. The universe may contain your choices as already existing parts of a complete structure, a block of space-time in which past, present, and future are equally real. This does not mean you didn't choose. It means your choosing is part of the structure. It means your deliberation, your weighing of options, your eventual decision, all these are real and genuinely yours. They are simply also part of a coherent whole. Consider what happens when you make a decision. The moment before, it feels open. The moment after, it feels fixed as anything in the past. Does this transformation mean the choice was illusory? No, it means the choice was real. Real enough to become part of history. Real enough to leave records. Real enough to constrain what can consistently happen next. This is not fatalism. Fatalism says your choices don't matter, that whatever will happen regardless of what you do. Consistency says the opposite. Your choices matter enormously. They help determine which history exists, but they cannot create contradiction. They cannot make 2 + 2 = 5. Consider a simple exercise. Today, make a small, deliberate choice, something trivial, like taking an unusual route to work. Notice, the moment before, it felt open. The moment after, it felt fixed. Was the choice real? Of course it was. Does its subsequent fixedness erase your choosing? It does not. You have discovered what freedom within consistency feels like. It feels exactly like free will, because it is free will, the only kind that could possibly exist. The alternative, libertarian, free will, the ability to choose inconsistently, to create effects without causes, to act outside the physical order entirely, is not coherent. You cannot lose what was never possible. And what you have, the ability to participate in which consistent history becomes real, is not a consolation prize. It is the genuine article. We are not prisoners of time. We are participants in its structure. Our choices are threads in a tapestry that, seen from outside, simply is. But those threads are ours. We weave them. They could not exist without us. The arrow of time, causation, free will, all these concepts transform when seen through the lens of consistency. Time has a direction because consistency accumulates. Causes precede effects because records accumulate. We feel free because we are part of how the consistent history is determined. But the deepest questions remain. Why does anything exist at all? Why is there a universe with these laws, this structure, this remarkable property of logical coherence? As we approach the end of our journey, we confront the ultimate mystery. We have journeyed far, from an empty party to the fabric of space-time, from paradox to protection, from the arrow of time to the nature of freedom. Now we arrive at the deepest question philosophy can ask. Why does anything exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? This question has haunted thinkers for millennia. Every religion attempts an answer. Every philosophy confronts it. And science, for most of its history, has simply set it aside, accepting the existence of the universe as a brute fact, an unexplained starting point for investigation. But chronology protection suggests something remarkable, something that may illuminate even this ultimate mystery. Consider what we have learned. The universe does not merely happen to be consistent. It actively enforces consistency. The laws of physics prevent logical contradiction. Time machines that would create paradox destroy themselves before they conform. This means logic is not merely a tool we use to think about reality. Logic is woven into reality's structure. The laws of physics and the laws of logic are not separate categories. They are aspects of the same deep order. Now ask, what does this imply about the question of existence? Imagine trying to conceive of absolute nothing. Not empty space. Space is something. Not a vacuum. A vacuum is a state of a physical field. True nothing. The absence of space, time, matter, energy, law, logic, potential, possibility. The absence of everything. Notice something. You cannot do it. Even the absence of everything is a concept, a something. It is a description. It implies a describer. True nothing would be the absence even of absence, the non-existence of non-existence. This is not merely difficult to imagine. It is incoherent. Here is the haunting possibility. Perhaps non-existence is impossible. If contradiction cannot exist, if the laws of physics enforce the laws of logic, then perhaps absolute nothingness is itself a kind of contradiction, a nothing that somehow is, a void that exists, an absence that has presence. If so, then existence is not contingent but necessary. The universe exists not because something caused it, not because something chose to create it, but because non-existence is logically impossible. The alternative to something is not nothing. It is incoherence. This is speculative. I want to be honest about the limits of our knowledge. We cannot prove this. Perhaps we never can. But the direction of the evidence is suggestive. Chronology protection shows that physics enforces logic. This suggests logic is fundamental, more fundamental, perhaps, than matter or energy or space-time itself. And if logic is fundamental, then perhaps logical necessity extends all the way down. Perhaps existence itself is required. Imagine a library containing every possible book. Most are gibberish, random sequences of letters that form no words, convey no meaning. But some books are consistent stories. They have characters whose actions follow from their situations, plots that cohere, events that connect. These stories do not require an author who chose to write them. Their consistency makes them possible, and possibility, perhaps, is enough. We might be characters in one such story, a story called A Universe with These Physical Laws. Our story exists because it is consistent. It hangs together. It contains no contradictions. Inconsistent stories don't exist, not because they're forbidden, but because inconsistency is not a story. Consider mathematical truths. 2 + 2 = 4, not because of a rule imposed from outside, but because 4 is what 2 + 2 means. The necessity is built into the concepts themselves. Mathematics is not arbitrary. It could not be otherwise. Perhaps existence shares this necessity. The universe is not here by accident. It is not here by choice. It is here because non-existence is incoherent, because the alternative to something is not nothing, but contradiction. This would mean we are not accidents. We are not fortunate. We are not the beneficiaries of some cosmic lottery that might have gone differently. We are necessary. Our existence is part of the logical structure of reality itself. I find this neither comforting nor disturbing. It simply is. The universe exists because it must. The alternative was never possible. And here, in this vast structure of logical necessity, we find ourselves, advanced monkeys on a minor planet, somehow able to ask why, somehow able to glimpse the architecture of existence, somehow able to look at an empty party and see a message about the fabric of reality. We ask the cosmos if the past can be changed. The cosmos answered with silence. Let us return to that answer and understand, finally, what it means. We return now to where we began. June 28, 2009, Cambridge, England. A room prepared with champagne, canapes, and a banner reading, "Welcome Time Travellers." Coordinates published, time specified, invitation extended to the entire future of human civilization. The champagne warmed, the canapes dried, the chairs stayed empty. Nobody came. At the beginning of our journey, this seemed merely whimsical, an amusing demonstration that backward time travel is impossible. A physicist's joke with a serious point. Now we see it differently. The time travelers couldn't come. Not because time travel is obviously forbidden by the laws of physics, it is not. Not because the universe arbitrarily prohibits it. There is no such prohibition. They couldn't come because their coming would create paradox, and paradox cannot exist. The very design of the party ensured this. The invitations were published worldwide. Any guest arriving would be detected, documented, celebrated. Their presence would be known to history. And any time traveller whose presence becomes known to history faces the question, if we knew they were coming, why didn't we prevent paradoxes? Why didn't we warn them against actions that would contradict the past? The experiment was designed to detect visitors from the future, and detection creates the conditions for paradox. The party defeated itself not through failure, but through success, through being exactly the kind of test that chronology protection prevents. The empty room was not a disappointment, it was a message. It told us something profound about the structure of reality. It told us we live in a universe where logic is not merely a way we think. It is woven into the fabric of what exists, where the laws of physics and the laws of logic are not separate domains, but aspects of the same deep order, where contradictions are not merely forbidden, but impossible, not by decree, but by the very nature of existence. The silence of the empty room spoke volumes. It said, reality makes sense. It said, causality holds. It said, the past is safe from meddling, not because of rules imposed from outside, but because reality is consistency. We have travelled far to hear this message. We have bent space-time into loops, confronted paradoxes that devour themselves, watched time machines destroy themselves at the threshold of activation. We have seen the arrow of time as the direction of consistency, causation as the direction of record-making, free will as participation in which coherent history becomes real. And we have glimpsed the possibility that existence itself is necessary, that the universe exists because non-existence is incoherent, that we are here because we must be. That logic precedes and underlies everything. Where does this leave us? We are not prisoners of time. We never were. Time is not a river carrying us helplessly from past to future. It is a structure, a framework that makes existence coherent. We are not trapped in the present. We are manifestations of consistency. We are not victims of determinism. We are participants in the determination of which consistent history exists. The arrow of time points not away from an inaccessible past, but toward the completion of coherence. Each moment is connected to every other moment through webs of consistency that cannot be broken without unraveling existence itself. Look at the stars tonight. Every photon reaching your eye began its journey years or centuries or millennia ago. You see the past, the light that left Proxima Centauri 4 years ago, the light that left the Andromeda Galaxy 2.5 million years ago, the light of the cosmic microwave background that has been travelling since the universe was 380,000 years old. You can see the past. You cannot touch it. This is chronology protection in action. The past is visible but unalterable, present but protected, real but complete. Every time you look at the night sky, you witness the universe's commitment to consistency. And here is the wonder that crowns all our investigations. We can understand this. The atoms in your body were forged in the cores of dying stars. The patterns in your brain are arrangements of matter, quarks and electrons, governed by physics, obeying mathematics. And yet these arrangements of matter contemplate the mathematics that governs them. These physical systems grasp abstract truths about the cosmos. You are matter that knows it is matter. You are physics that understands physics. You are time investigating itself. That this is possible is remarkable. The universe is under no obligation to be comprehensible. It could have been chaos, random, lawless, meaningless. Instead, it is structured. It obeys equations. It respects logic. And somehow, in at least one corner of it, structures have arisen that ask, why? We asked the universe if the past can be changed. The universe answered with empty chairs and flat champagne. But that silence was not empty. It was full of meaning. It told us that we live in a cosmos that makes sense, that the deepest laws are not arbitrary, but necessary, that logic is not a human invention, but a feature of reality, that we belong here not by chance, but by the same necessity that makes 2 + 2 = 4. We are not accidents. We are not strangers. We are the universe contemplating itself. And that, I believe, makes us something very special indeed. Let us leave the party at last. The champagne warmed, the canapés dried, the banner waited for guests who never came. We thought this meant time travel is impossible. We now know it means something far more profound. We live in a universe where logic is woven into physics, where contradictions are not merely forbidden, but incoherent, where the laws that govern matter are the same laws that govern thought, where the arrow of time is not a prison wall, but the direction of consistency, the way coherence points. We asked the cosmos if the past can be changed. The cosmos answered with silence. But that silence speaks. It says, reality makes sense. Causality holds. The past is safe from meddling, not because of rules imposed from outside, but because reality is consistency. And here we stand, advanced monkeys on a minor planet, orbiting an average star in an ordinary galaxy, in a cosmos of 2 trillion galaxies, somehow able to grasp this, somehow able to ask why time flows forward and to understand the answer, somehow able to look at an empty room and see a message about the structure of existence. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us, and yet it does. That we can understand the cosmos at all is remarkable. That we can stand here and know why we cannot travel to the past, why the equations permit it, but reality prevents it. This is not a limitation. It is a revelation. We are not prisoners of time. We are expressions of it. We are what consistency looks like when it becomes aware of itself and asks, why? Look up at the stars. Ask your questions. Occasionally, find an answer. That is what we are for.